Let me tell you about an important political trend that you need to be aware of. Did you hear about how in North Carolina, after Democrat Tricia Cotham was elected, she flipped her party affiliation to Republican, giving Republicans in the state legislature a veto-proof majority? And by now, I'm sure you've heard of Senator Kristen Sinema changing her party affiliation from Democrat to Independent when we had a very slim majority in the U.S. Senate for Democrats. I say this to say that if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. If a Democrat starts doing MAGA things, they're probably a MAGA candidate. And that is what's happening right now in Houston, and relatively nobody is talking about what could be one of the most consequential local elections in the entire country, because Houston is the roadmap to flipping Texas blue in 2024. The mayoral election is happening in 2023. It's very similar to what we saw in Chicago with Brandon Johnson and Paul Vallas, where Paul Vallas is a moderate Democrat who actually, plot twist, had a lot of ties to Republicans. In Houston, we have Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who has represented the 18th Congressional District for a long time, who is known for being a fixture of women's rights and civil rights in the U.S. House, including leading the charge on the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, who is running against Texas State Senator John Whitmire, who is most well known for being called out on the John Oliver show for pretty much saying that if prisoners don't want to be overheated in prisons, where a lot of prisoners in Texas have recently been dying, they just shouldn't commit crime. After saying that, they just don't want to put air conditioners in the prison. Seems like a clear violation of the 8th Amendment to me, but whatever. And to tell you the truth, as somebody who's lived in Houston for a few years, who grew up outside of Houston, I can't tell you anything else he's done. Because John Whitmire has been the second most powerful man in the Texas Senate for years, behind the Republican Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and he hasn't done anything to stop the erosion of our rights. Maybe we should follow the money on that one. How about that, John? Maybe we should follow the fact that John Whitmire has $10 million cash on hand. And if you go and look at his top donors, a lot of them are also the main donors to Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton and Dan Patrick, the people who have led the charge on stripping away Texans' civil rights. Maybe we should follow the money on that. How about that, John? If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And even further than that, John Whitmire didn't say anything about the affirmative action ruling from the Supreme Court. And on 4th of July, he shared images of him alongside Trump supporters who were wearing Trump flags and his button for mayor. Don't tell me that this is a Democrat running for mayor of one of the largest blue cities in Houston when you're funded by MAGA Republicans, when you've sat alongside right-wing extremists like Dan Patrick who have stripped away our civil rights and you haven't done a damn thing about it, and now you're toting around endorsements from individuals wearing Trump flags and your buttons for mayor. You're not a Democrat. You're not running as a Democrat. You're running as a grifter. Houston, I'm voting for Sheila Jackson Lee, and I strongly encourage you to do the same. Because you gotta ask yourself, when these attacks on our civil rights keep coming, when Houston keeps getting targeted, which it has been for a long time by the Republican legislature, is John Whitmire gonna stand up for the people of Houston, or is he gonna bow down to Patrick and Abbott like he's been doing his entire career? Don't Tricia Cotham our Houston. Don't let this man make you think he's a Democrat and get your vote. Because his financial record, his voting record, and a lot of other things show that he ain't. But hey, that's just my opinion. What do I know?